So for our shark jumping out of water, okay, this is going to be my ocean about here, somewhere, anywhere, somewhere over there. This is a bigger piece of paper than I planned on. And then for the head, I'm going to make a giant triangle, maybe a wider triangle. And since this is watercolor paper, I'm not going too dark on it. And then I'm going to bring maybe make it a little bit bigger, basically a big triangle. If you need to see me sketch it out, it's basically going to be a big triangle like that, and a big mouth like that. Then I'm going to bring it down, and then 2 giant fins. That's all we really need to do here. And then we'll give them teeth. So I'm just trying to get an idea of where I want to go with this. And then I'll get my little fins down here. Now it doesn't have to, I don't care about having a drawing that's perfect. I'm just trying to get an idea of where I'm going with it. Okay, and then the giant mouth. So triangle and like a circle almost, and down here, and then this is where the teeth are going to be. Right. So I know you can't see it too well because I made it pretty light. Can you see that now?
Yeah, that's much better, Birgit.
Okay, so you're going to see it once I end up getting it in there. Let me do this with a permanent Sharpie marker or a crayon. I'm going to use a crayon so you can see it. So basically it's a giant triangle with a half oval and a bottom. His teeth are going to be here, and then a fin and another fin. We don't need them to be perfect. We just basically need the top of his mouth, his nose, and his mouth, and a fin is really all we need to think about. And then we'll put the ocean somewhere back here. And I think I'm going to do something. I want to show you a couple things. We're going to incorporate the sky and ocean and shark into the painting. So I think that's going to be fun. Okay, so we've got all these colors in here. I'll start with that. And I'm thinking about my sky. How many clouds do I want in there? So I'm going to go wet on dry. And if you remember what wet and dry is, that means the paper's dry, and then I'm going to get my clouds in there. So I'm going to use maybe a blue. Find a blue for your sky. Make a nice puddle of it, or if you have a couple colors, we're just going to get a blue. And I'm going to use the belly of the brush, which is the fat part. And if I have a lot of water in my brush, then I'm not going to grab the tooth of the paper. So I'm going to practice this for a second. So basically, I'm going to hold the brush flat like that, and I'm going to go along the bottom like that. That edge is going to be our cloud, and then I'll fill in the top up here. Now this is just regular drawing paper, so that's why it soaks right in. So belly of the brush, let's use that. And I'm going to go ahead, make some big clouds. You can make some skinny ones by just changing how you hold your brush. So I'm going to go to the tip like that. You don't have to do this, but I just want to acquaint you with this. I'm going to skip my brush over the surface. You can make it really blue. You can make it light. There's all sorts of weather conditions. And then what I'm going to do is take my brush. So this way, I don't want the sky to be too dark because I want my shark to stand out. So I'm just going to go along the edge there, soften it up, make some clouds back there. Okay, then I'm going to bring it down to about here. I'm going to go ahead and dry this really quickly. And it doesn't have to be bone dry. That means it doesn't have to be super duper dry. Just take a brush and put your horizon in like that. That's going to be the easiest way. Another way of doing it is finding where your horizon is, and why you would even think of doing something like that is if you want a long ocean line. That way it doesn't go off to the side or in a different direction. That's the only reason we would want to think about it. Let's just go a little ways over here and maybe a little ways over here. We don't need to make it go all the way across. Maybe something like that. Let's leave some white space around it because we want our splash to be in here. And then let's go ahead and get the bottom wet just a little bit. Leave a lot of white area around it and go along the bottom. Okay, you can see I've kept it over here and here. Now, if we have a toothbrush, or if you don't have a toothbrush, think about one of these brushes, a small one, a medium size, or your toothbrush, one that you're not currently using, and then we're going to make another puddle. Now, one way to do this is use masking, but the problem with masking is if you don't spray it right, it ends up everywhere. So we're not going to do that. We're just going to use something easy. I'm going to make my blue color, and hopefully you can see that. Then I'll take my brush, dip it in water, get it in my blue, or a little bit in my paint here, and then I'm going to just rake it like this. So I'm taking it, pointing my brush down, and going right over the bottom like that. Okay, so do you see what I'm doing? I'm going like, let's do it like this. Holding it down. We're not doing it like that. Down. Okay, and then if we take a few different blues, not too blue, but a little light, like having some white, if you have white, you can do that too. And we could also use a little salt in our ocean to give it a really interesting texture. And let's see, so choose some blues. Even if it goes into the ocean, that's pretty nice. So let's just do a little bit of spatter so you get to know where everything is. And if this color, let's add a little bit more color into the ocean. Maybe just let it mingle into the water that's on the surface. Okay, so I'm going to just, you see, I'm not trying to cover up all my blue. I'm just trying to have a little bit. And the other fun thing, like I mentioned last week, is if we took a little piece of paper, I'm going to tear it, get it wet, dip it in my color, and maybe if I just go like this, it'll give me little mini waves. And then maybe I'll bring it down a little bit more. And if we want to have a land or an island back there, you can always do that. And to add to our splash, we might do more, but that's as much as I'm going to do right now. Then I'll take a little salt. And if this is really, really wet and like a puddle, we're not going to have a lot of results. We need it to be a little less shiny. Mine is pretty wet, but we can give it a try. So we're just going to go ahead and put it in there, because once that starts to dry, it can give the impression of more spatter. That would also be great if you're trying to do a sky or a universe. So let's go to our shark. I'm going to use some of that same blue, just a little bit for a shadow and underneath where his tummy's going to be. And I have a mess of colors over here, so I'll take a little bit of that blue, drop it into my purple or even my orange, whatever you have there. I just don't necessarily need it to be the same blue as my ocean, otherwise we're not going to see him at all. And I'm going to go underneath his mouth, down to his tummy, over to his fin. So you can see we don't have much of a line drawing. And I don't want to cover it all up, otherwise I'm going to lose my splash. But it'll at least give me some idea. And then we'll go, now I need my shark to stand out from the sky, and my sky is lighter. So I'm going to go a little bit darker on the side of my shark, just so he stands out. And then with all those hard lines, that's a hard line when you really get to see it. That can be distracting, so I'm going to clean off my brush and soften that edge. Just a little bit. That way it doesn't stand out, because that's not where I want to bring all my attention. I want the attention to go to the mouth and the nose. Then let's bring a little bit around the top of his nose and soften. And by the time I get back up here, the sky should be dry. Okay, so I like all that shading. That's what we call this, is shading. Now I'm going to go ahead and hopefully this is dry. This is a little wet, but I'll still work with it. I'm going to shift over to a slightly smaller brush. I'm going to hold off on the mouth. Now you may be doing it differently, and that's fine. So I'm going to go ahead and maybe get a little bit of black into my blue color, or if you have a gray, you can use the gray, or if you want, you can take a little white if you've got the white in there. Now, I don't usually use white, but whatever feels right and good to you. Then I'm going to go ahead up to the top along my pencil line that I created. And I'm going to press a little bit harder, so I expand that stroke, and then I'm going to taper it. So what we're doing here, which a lot of people don't understand, is if we press, we get a wider stroke, and if we release, we get a thinner stroke, all from the same brush. So I'm going to go ahead on the other side, like that. And bring that line down here. Now, I'm not too concerned about the eye or anything like that, because we're not really going to see it. And I'm standing up, so I'm getting more of a wiggly line. If I don't want that, I would sit down and maybe support my hand. And I'm going to soften that edge so it doesn't look so wiggly. And maybe bring a little bit of that darker color over to the fin so it stands out. And maybe a little bit more up here so the nose stands out. And our shark isn't really going to be black, but I'm using that dark color just so it stands out. And turning the paper so I can reach those areas a little bit better and get a cleaner line. And once it dries, I can clean that up too if I want to, even by going in with a darker color or just lifting a little bit of that color out. Just like that. All right, now that's basically what I need, and then I'm going to go ahead and think about his mouth. And it's going to be, we've got his lips, which aren't really lips, I think, and then his teeth and the inside. So I'm going to go ahead and find the inside of his mouth using my reds. I'm also thinking I don't want his mouth to be so flat. I want it to look like something can go right down into his mouth. So I'm going to find my foundation color first, which is a red or a magenta, whatever you have. And then, so it doesn't spread all over the place, I'm going to take that color and put it right in his mouth, like that, fill it in. I'm going to bring the color up to his teeth. And then I'm just going to, instead of painting his teeth, I'm painting the spaces in between his teeth. And you can be perfect or not perfect. It's up to you. So what this is a little negative painting. You could even go from the line there and make a little line out, like little triangles is what we're thinking about. Those little razor sharp teeth. Just like that. Okay, so now we have our basic mouth. I'm bringing it down to the bottom so I can get more teeth down here. And that's going to be little triangles. And let the water fill in those spaces. Okay, so that's our basic mouth there. Now that looks pretty flat. And to make it look like something could go down into that scary mouth, I'm going to take that darker color while the color is still wet and go along the bottom and just put that in. And then I might lift my paper up a little bit. Oops, there goes that thing. And try to let that color run up a little bit in his mouth. Just like that. And I have to be careful how I hold my paper because I had so much water over here. And then I might bring a little bit of that darker color up to the top. Not much. And if it looks like it's not moving, I can take another brush and either lift a little color out or add a bit more. Just try to blend it. So now that looks like a big old scary mouth. Then using our red color, let's add some lips. And if we add those lips, then we'll be able to see our teeth. Yeah.
My teeth, since I painted them, I can draw them. Like went into the red, and it made the whole mouse black.
Let me take a look at that. Oh, cute! I love that. Okay, well you can handle that. Let me show you how to deal with this. Okay, let me just soften that bottom edge. Let me go ahead and do it on this one. So you've got a big dark mouth right in here, right? So take a pencil, make your teeth if that makes it easier for you. Okay, and that's going to be the bottom. Those are your teeth. Take your color that's already in the mouth and bring it down in between those spaces of the teeth. That way you don't have to lift anything out. We may lift a little tiny bit out up here and bring in some red. Does that help? Okay. Now it is wet. The most important thing, what I wanted to get here, was I had the little bit of the red mingling into that darker color. We can hold off on the lips, and once you get that lip in here, it can look strange, and so that's why we're going to have to soften it. Like he needs a lip up here. And remember this up here, we softened that edge. So we can hold off on this for just a second. Let's not get worried about that. When I'm looking at your paintings, I really think they're awesome. I think your mouths are wonderful. We're not going to worry about it yet. So let's leave that part alone and go to the other part of our shark. Let's think about getting more shadow down here and more splash. And if you notice, if you put salt in, I didn't have much contrast here, but it creates these really interesting little blooms. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that salt. Now, I'm going to try to make that a bit more dramatic so it just doesn't look like one big mouth coming out of the water. And so I'm going to go ahead and let's find, I want to get more splash looking at this. I'm going to get a bit more color or even shift the color a little bit. And maybe let's add a few more splashes or even change the size of the dots with a different size brush. And to make it splash, what we need is a nice little puddle. Okay, let's get more contrast in there. So that means our shark should stand up stand out a bit more. Okay, so, and this is the fun part to do that. I think his tummy is a little flat, so you need to get more color there. This is drying, so I'm going to go ahead and take some of our shadow color that we have, which is basically our ocean with maybe a little gray or more blue or even purple. Let's go ahead and bring maybe underneath his mouth there. It's okay if the color bleeds a little bit. We're just trying to leave that separation between the teeth and the lips. The thing about watercolor is that it does bleed and run. It can feel out of control, but that's also the really beautiful part about it when it moves. Okay, so I'm not trying to get the shadow, and I'm flattening my brush just a little bit like that so I get a wider stroke. Okay, and then we're coming up to the lips, so I don't want to cover it all the way. I'll just do that. We're just repeating what we've done before. Okay, get a little blue in there, maybe in the tummy there, and maybe a little fin over here. Okay, and then I'll take another brush and soften a little bit. So that has time to dry, and let's soften a few of these edges. We just need to build the color up. Don't worry, this is the trickiest part of the whole thing. Okay, so we can even just leave a few hard lines. We just need some color there. Now he looks like he's jumping out of the water. This fin is disappearing a little bit, so I have to decide, do I want to do anything with that? Or another fun thing is if we take our water, if we don't want to use just splash, we could use the belly of the brush like we did the clouds and just touch spots in here with just the bottom part. So it looks like we have a lot of action. Okay, so now he's coming out. I'm going to go to the top part up here to get those lips in on the top. All right, so you can see that I have all the little triangles. You can always do more at another time, but I'm going to go around the top part of his lips so they stand out. Even if I skip my brush, that'll be fine. Because if we have, what this is contrast. We have the light teeth, a little darker color there, and so then that should show everybody his big mouth. And I can leave it like that, or maybe soften a little bit of that if you want to. Okay, so I want to show you, let's see, we've got the teeth.
So he says her shark has no teeth.
The what? Oh, okay. So let's see, let's think about this for a second. If I had the big mouth, we've got our big mouth. And let's say you didn't put the triangle in. Let's say this is the mouth. Okay, what we can do is think about where the mouth is going to be, and then imagine the teeth, oops, like little triangles. And little triangles down here. Maybe I'll make a bigger thing like that. And then just take your color that's inside and bring it up in between those little triangles, which will be the teeth. Just like that. And for the lips, now if you do, if it does touch, that's okay too. But if we stay away from it, then it stands out a bit more. But let's say we touch. As long as we have little white teeth, it'll be fine. And if you don't have teeth, that's fine. So that's basically the idea. That looks scary to me. Okay, and now I could come back in and I think our shark is looking good, and maybe I'll add a bit more color to the ocean. I'm going to use my little piece of paper and make a bigger puddle of color, and then I think we're really pretty done. Maybe I'll add a little green into it, or even purple, whatever you like. I'm going to take my piece of paper, I got it wet, and then let's add some waves. Or even scoot down the color. Or you can use a brush. Maybe the brush stroke isn't giving me enough contrast, so that's why I'm scooting it down. And I'm going back and forth like this, but what I realized is I could just change it. It doesn't need to just go back and forth. I can wiggle it. So that would be our basic shark. What do you think? Everyone, how do you feel about your sharks?